Look at that. They have all the notifications on Zoom these days.
I know.
um, I'm gonna mute the audio so I can't hear it. But let's do this. Let's do this. I don't know. We just lost Rashana. She was there. There we
Yeah.
go. This is the Oglesby and Scott show. And my name is Charles Oglesby of the Oglesby and Scott show with Miss Rashana Scott of Chicago, Chi-Town, South Side. How you
Hi,
doing?
everybody. Good, good. How are you?
Good. You know, you've been traveling. You've been around the world. You just got back from Tampa. How was the Tampa trip?
It was great. It was great. It was the Innovative Income Summit, and it was all about women tapping into their highest self so they can go and be the best that they need to be in this world. So it was good. It was good. A lot of business owners, entrepreneurs under one roof, a lot of 6 and 7 figure women in one building. So it was great for that energy. I can't even remember the last time I've been to an event or traveled to go to an event. And, pre-COVID, that was the norm. So it definitely felt good kind of being back in that event space. But then, numbers on the rise again and all that stuff. So I don't know how much more of that I'll be doing. But nevertheless, it was good. I came back, I'm fired up and getting, putting things in motion in my business, more things. So it was good.
When the numbers go up, I turn up. So, if they go up, I'm gonna be traveling even more. I might be in Cabo. You never know. So we actually just got back from Dallas. It was a great event. So for the listeners, if you didn't see on Instagram, which I'm sure you did, it was a whole lot of money in Dallas this weekend. It was a great experience. We had a dinner, we had the brunch, and then we had like a little after dinner. Got a chance to hang out with Tayon Tech, Xavier Miller, got a chance to hang out with Black Wealth Renaissance, all those cool guys. So yeah, it was a good experience. And I always tell people that it's not about I'm kind of stealing this, but it's not about being in the right place at the right time. It's about being in the right place all the time. You never know you're going to get that gym. So I encourage you guys who are listening to take advantage of these events that you see coming up. It's a whole lot of festivals, like Invest Fest is coming up, the different conferences coming up in Atlanta and all of the country. So you want to be in that room. But after that recap, we do have a special guest. As we always do on the Oglesby and Scott show. She is an accidental real estate investor landlord. She grew her portfolio from $20,000 in debt to having $1 million net worth in just 4 years. And I'm sure you guys are going to get a ton of value out of this conversation. She goes by the name Miss Jantzen Young. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so our first question that we like to ask all of our guests is, tell us what life was like growing up. Who are you? What was life like before millionaire status?
Yeah, I think I had a pretty normal childhood. I don't know what's interesting about it. So I'm a little church kid. When I say that, no, seriously, I grew up in the church. If the doors were open, I was there. My mother was the minister of music. She was the youth leader. She did everything. My dad was the deacon. Any speaking event, we were thrust into the front of the room. So I lost my fear of public speaking very, very early. And yeah, that was really my whole childhood is just church. I went to, I guess in college, I went to University of Tampa, graduated with the international business degree with a minor in Spanish. I actually wanted to major in Spanish, but my father refused to pay for something that half of Florida does for free. So hence international business. I thought that I was going to go overseas. And I really wanted to help microfunding with women, specifically in the continent of Africa. But I took a detour with this whole full-time job situation and spent 13 years in financial services here in the States. And that's when I discovered real estate. And oddly enough, now after a couple of hops, I do lending as my main source of income now. Yeah. It's weird how it all comes full circle.
Nice. So you mentioned you were in the financial services industry. So to what extent did that look like?
Yeah. So my background, my genius, I have discovered, is making really complicated things really, really simple. So I was flying all over the US teaching real estate, investment advisors how to grow their businesses. So people like you and me that have stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, I'm teaching the reps how they can communicate with us, gain more of that wallet share, and grow our wealth using the securities markets. And in that travel, I realized that I was probably on the wrong side of that desk because their commission checks looked nothing like what I was making as a full-time trainer. So I knew that there was something missing. I just didn't know what exactly that was or what was the missing step for me to reach where I wanted to be.
So you mentioned that you kind of accidentally fell into real estate.
Yeah.
Can you tell us that story?
Sure. Yeah. So it's not not an uncommon one. I was living on one side of Florida, on the east side. My husband was working on the west coast of Florida. So when we got married, in my living room, because there was no shacking up in my house, when my father married us in our living room, I moved in with him in the middle of the state. So both of us had about an hour and a half, 2-hour commute each way every day to go to work. And I realized in LA, in New York, this means nothing. As a Florida girl, this is torture. Okay, we couldn't do that. I wasn't going to have my baby on the highway. So when I got pregnant, we decided somebody had to move. My husband found a job closer to where I was, so we bought a house there, but we couldn't sell the house that we were living in. So our broker recommended that rather than selling for a loss, why don't you just rent it for a little while? And that was honestly the best decision we've ever made. Because we were far away, it forced us to use property management. It forced us to be hands off. I could not come down and change our light bulb or fix your toilet or answer any phone calls in the middle of the night because I can't help you. So right from the beginning, it really forced us to treat real estate like a actual business. And it was an accident, but I'm so glad that happened because after that, we read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's a shocker. Everyone reads that book. And but it really, really resonated for us. And we bought our multifamilies and then we just started rolling it from there.
Got it. Nice. And so just so I can understand. So you say you were living on the east side and he was living on the west side. And then you kept the house that was your house?
No. So I was living with my parents. He was living with his parents on opposite coasts of Florida. Uh-huh. We were shopping for something together. So we went and we found this beautiful home. It was a new build in the middle of the states called Lakeland, Florida. And we put in an offer. We got approved. We bought the house. We closed on a Friday. And my dad was like, "Congratulations. What time are you coming home?" I'm like, "I just paid for this house." And he's like, "That's well and good, but you're still not married." So I stayed at my house, paying for a house I am not allowed to live in. And I was like, you know what, we're done with this. And so I asked my dad, "Would you marry me?" He said, "Yep." He came down the next weekend. There were like 6 people in the house. And he married us in our living room. And that was the first night that I could stay there. We're very old school in the South.
Like it though.
Yeah. And then you guys moved out of that house because of the commute for work. And then you guys moved east or west?
Yeah, we moved to to the East Coast. It's a small city called Lake Mary, Florida. We found our nice house there and it started working out.
How much time elapsed between the time you bought that house and then you decided that you didn't want to live in that house or you couldn't and you needed to get a different house?
Yeah. So there's a couple of stories there. So first, the house that we had in Lakeland, we lived there for 5 years, and it actually wasn't a bad life. I had grown to deal with the commute, just put on some great podcasts, listen to NPR, like life, it goes by, it's fine. It wasn't until we got pregnant that we decided this
Mm,
is kind of crazy. We need to do
got it.
something else. So that's when we
Okay.
decided to settle down, if as it were.
And so why weren't you able to at least sell the property for a profit if you lived there for 5 years? There was no appreciation.
Yeah, so I graduated in 2007, right after the bubble burst. So five
Mm,
years later, we still weren't back to where we needed to be. So I didn't buy at the tippity top of the market, but 5 years was not enough time for the market to come back. Now that property is worth pretty good money, but at the time now.
what was it worth when you paid for it? Or what was it worth when you purchased it? And what was it worth when you were pregnant?
Yeah, so we paid 180 for that property, and then when we had the kid, we could have sold it for 182, but with all the closing costs, commissions,
Mm,
we wouldn't have gotten that money back. So
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't think about, like, when you take out mortgages, you're paying fees. When you close, you're paying fees. When you get a realtor, you're paying fees. Like, it starts to eat up quite a bit of money.
hmm Yeah. And like you said, you have to account for all of that. So I have that conversation often.
Yeah.
So what was the numbers in terms of, what you were profiting every month as a rental? So you're paying a mortgage on it. Now you decide to
Yep.
rent it. But then also you mentioned like you have property management in place now. So what did those numbers look like?
So remember, this is all an accident. There was no planning in this at all. So after paying the mortgage, the HOA, and the property manager, we cleared, drumroll please, $23 a month. It was awesome.
I bet it was because I mean you save your credit, right? Like you're not gonna, go into foreclosure or do a short
Yeah.
sale because most realtors would suggest like a short sale, and most people don't understand or don't even think that like a short sale still affects your credit. Yes, it saves
Yeah,
you from having an actual foreclosure on your credit, but those missed payments are still going to count against you. So,
exactly.
why,
yeah,
hold on. Why would a realtor recommend a short sale instead of telling you to hold it as a rental?
some realtors may not just recommend
So
that.
they can get that check. That's why they're going to
Yeah,
get that check if they.
commission.
I'm like, I don't know, they maybe just aren't educated
So
and,
shout out.
and understand the benefits, right? And know
Yeah.
the benefits, and then also being able to provide you with the resources of property management and maintenance
Right.
and like that. In addition to getting that check, but it's not all about the check, Charles. Some
Yeah,
of us
So,
do it for more
Rashana,
than just
do it for the
you brought
love.
up a really interesting point, and I want to hammer this home, right? So, if you, whether you're an agent, an investor, a business owner, whatever, if you have spent the time to educate yourself on like one tool, like I know how to use this hammer, and this is the best hammer in the world, then every problem looks like a nail, right? But when you say, you know what, I know how to sell property, I know to help my buyers negotiate good deals, I know how to rent property, I know how to wholesale property, I know how to double close property. When you get all of I know owner financing. Yeah. When you get all of those tools, now you can see the same problem and find a whole lot of other solutions. So that, Rashana, that's a really good point. I just hope, people don't miss that.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is. And you go into being what we call like a transactional engineer, right? Because you're presented with the
Mhm.
transaction and then you figure out the best way to navigate those deals. And if you aren't educated on what it could look like or what it could be, that could literally be a missed deal, right? Like I
Exactly.
tell my Infinity members all the time, we're in this business to help people,
Yeah.
and we are problem solvers, so let's find a solution to their problem. And depending on what the problem is, the solution can look like this and this. Maybe
Yeah.
listing doesn't make sense. Maybe A short sale doesn't make sense. Maybe we should wholesale it, if we need a cash, 2-week close or something like that. But like you said, you have to first be educated in all of these areas. If you call yourself a realtor or a real estate investor, you have to be educated so you can help out, the clients.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you bought your new home, you're cash flowing $23. When did you do your next deal and what did that look like?
So after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, we got this idea that, okay, well, cash flow is a thing and there is a way for me to make money without actually working. No idea that existed. We went to YouTube University. We gobbled up every bit of knowledge we could. YouTube said you find good deals on Facebook or on Craigslist. So we went to Craigslist. I found a quadplex not very far from where I lived and the price looked good. I mean, what do I know? But the person said it was a good deal. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take it. So I go to dial the number and my husband was like, baby, you don't know how to buy a multifamily. I was like, yeah, but I'm pretty sure the guy on the other end of the phone does. So I just called and I let him drive the conversation. And I'm so grateful that I did because that one conversation led me to a real estate investment association with tons of people who do this for a living. I met closing attorneys, agents, contractors, tile people, electrician, literally everything I needed because I picked up the phone and was vulnerable. And I often say vulnerability is my superpower. I just told him I'm new and I need help. And he was like, girl, we're going to make this work for you.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. I love that. It's so important that people hear that because people often let that vulnerability turn into fear, right? Like it's the fear of the I don't know or the not known, the I don't know or the unknown. And people just don't take action because they don't know. But like you say, you picked up the phone, you were vulnerable. You said, I didn't know. And that led you to, like you said, a ton of resources. So I'm so glad that you said that because we believe heavily in the act of doing, right?
Yeah.
Jumping out there, making it work, picking up the
100%.
phone, having the conversation, doing what it takes. I love that you were like, even your husband said, like, you don't know nothing about buying a multi-unit. And you like, I know I don't. So I'm going to call somebody who does, right? And then on the other end, they're trying to sell it. So of course they're trying to make a deal and they're going to give you the information that you need. And then, you can gather all of that information, take it with what you've learned, YouTube University, call a broker, call an attorney, and you can piece all of this information together to get a deal done. So I really love that you did that.
No, absolutely. And so that's not the end of this. I don't call it a nightmare, but it was definitely a trying time in my life. So that wholesaler, he helped me get the property under contract. I gave him my $5,000 deposit and YouTube said, you have to have a hard money lender. I had my hard money lender, had my down payment, had my little budget for the rehab. I was set. 3 days before closing, my lender calls me back and says, we're out. Because the current rents weren't enough to support the debt ratio. So that's just what they had to pull out. So again, I was honest and vulnerable and I called up that wholesaler and I was like, yo, I have all my ducks in a row. I had no way to anticipate this. I didn't even know that this ratio existed. And he had every right to just say, okay, well, you just lost your $5,000 and you're going to be blacklisted and like no other investor in this area is going to work with you. But instead, he was like, give me a minute. He hung up the phone with me. And an hour later, the title company called me back and said, you're funded. It's just a matter of knowing your network. And I even know my network. I just knew enough to ask for help.
Yeah. And you had good intentions too, right? Like, let's not discount that you showed up and you were vulnerable. And at the end of the day, you weren't trying to get over on anybody. You were just trying to make a deal work. And you were like, I need help. So, yeah. Good stuff.
They found financing for you.
Yeah, it was another private investor or private lender who had just cashed out of another deal with the title company. And, now that I'm a private lender, I know like the worst thing you can do to a private lender is give my money back because then I got to go do work to find somebody else to give it to. So the title company was like, hey, we want to close the deal. My wholesaler was like, hey, I want to close the deal. I'm like, hey, I want to close the deal. The private lender's like, hey, I want to close the deal. They just helped put all of us together. And to this day, I've never met the gentleman, but I guarantee you what, he gets paid 3 days early every single time his check is due. And what was so crazy to me is that I did have some concerns about finding the money. But after that experience, I was able to rehab the property, get some new tenants in there. I raised the rent significantly. We went from about $600 to $900 for each unit. So it was a pretty big jump. And after that, we were able to refinance the property and get all of our money back.
Wow.
When we refinanced and got all of our money back, of course, I had to pay off my hard money lender. And then rather than taking my deposit back, I just rolled it into a fiveplex. I just moved up to the commercial space because why the heck not? And in that deal, now we're a year out. This is a year of me networking at those real estate investment events. It's a year of me networking with other private lenders with more competitive rates. We've got good relationships going, and I want to give them a shot at the deal. 2 months later, I got a phone call from the old lender, the one on the original fourplex that I had. He was upset with me that I didn't use his money again. So I had to apologize for not taking his money, but I promised if he could meet this other person's rates that I would use him in the future. And I did honor my word on a future deal. So it's crazy. Like money is not the problem. It just isn't.
Right. So the fiveplex, did you find that through Craigslist as well, or did you find that a different way?
Yeah, Craigslist. Yeah.
Wow.
Can you repeat that again? That money is not the problem.
Oh my gosh, it just isn't. And I would go so far as to say that if you have a deal, you have something extremely valuable, particularly to people with money. Because think about their position, right? I'm sitting here. If my money is in a bank, I'm earning nothing. If I have a CD, I've got 1%. If I'm invested in the stock market, okay, but I'm conservative, 6, 7, maybe 8% returns if I'm pushing that boundary a little bit. But if you can come to somebody and say, I have an opportunity, not I need money. No, I have an opportunity for you to double your returns. If it's sitting in a CD, the amount of time it takes you a whole year to earn 1%, I can pay you that in 1 month. You see how that conversation shifts a bit and you're in a different position, right? Mm-hmm. So you're not here as a beggar. You're here as someone with an opportunity, with speaking the language that someone who has money doing nothing really needs. So yeah, it's a match made in heaven. It's just a mindset shift. Mindset shift.
And that's a bar, as we like to say on the show, because I have done several speeches and talks on raising private money, and that's actually in my presentation, in my slides, is present the opportunity to them as an opportunity, because it is, right? And who wants to have FOMO? Nobody, right? So that's why that investor called you, because they were missing out. And yes, so you are absolutely right. Like I said, present the opportunity as an opportunity for them to, basically invest money with you and get a return. They're able to work with somebody who's experienced, someone who's knowledgeable, someone who has graduated from YouTube University, you got it going on. So, and you're going to do the work too, right? But also on the flip side, I let them know too, like when I'm raising private money, I'm like, hey, I can go to the bank, I can go here, I can go there. Like I have all of these options, right? Like I really don't need your money, right? But when it's presented as an opportunity, then people are definitely willing to work with you more.
100%, absolutely.
So you mentioned that your first property, the single family home, you were managing that long distance. Did you take the same strategy with these new properties, even though you were closer? Like, were you still using property management, still running it like a business? What did that look like?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. So, and the answer requires me to take a little bit of a step back. To me, real estate is just a vehicle. Our goal, our destination was always retirement. And I didn't care how I got there. Real estate just seemed the most efficient way we knew of how to get there faster. All right. So for me, retirement means money is coming in and I'm not doing work. So, and the journey to retirement, or the journey of passive income, or FIRE, whatever you want to call that, is a growth process, and you're building habits along the way. So if I start building habits that when the phone rings, I jump, or if I build the habit that when someone needs something, I drop my family's needs and I go and take care of that, that habit's not going to disappear when I reach my destination. So from the beginning, it happened accidentally, but it was serendipity. Like, God made this happen to me. It forced me to say, hey, it is possible to have a profitable property where I'm not stressing myself out. So if I could do it before on accident, I definitely can do it on purpose. So yes, every property we've ever owned has property management added to it. It's just a part of the expenses. And as long as we can still hit our numbers, I'm more than happy to do so.
I like it. I like it a lot because the same could be true. I just like the whole concept of money coming in without you having to work for it. Like, that was a gem right there. What do you got, Rashana?
So our next deal. So we got a single family, we got a 4-unit, we got a 5-unit, you know, the numbers are getting up there. So what are those looking like? And then are you holding everything you're taking down too, right? Like, are you using, or are you, you know, flipping any, are any short-term rentals, or is like the strategy simply like buy and hold traditional rentals?
Yeah. So our strategy, like I said, was retirement. And there's great ways to do short-term rentals with hands off. But for us, it made sense to just stay with long-term rentals. So that's been our strategy for everything. We actually, a year after we were renting our primary residence, the initial one in Lakeland, we were able to sell that and use that capital for something else. It was debt pay down. Back then, we were like 80 grand in debt. So that really helped us come up to only 20,000 in debt. It was a very exciting time. We did have a moment when we got pregnant again. I don't know why babies just do this to you. You reevaluate your life decisions. So my second child came, and
I can attest to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But how many kids do you have now?
Just one.
Just
one, but everything changed after him, though. Everything changed.
Everything.
Yeah, he made like, you know, $10 million like the next week after his kid was born.
It forces you. It forces you
like,
to change.
He was like, I got real bills now. Let me step it up.
Oh my goodness. I mean, everyone says the kids are expensive, but like, no, really, seriously, kids are expensive. So when I got pregnant the second time, we had this lovely home that I'm in right now. But I was looking at, I mean, the daycare bills here in this city are astronomical. And I'm looking at my husband, I'm like, okay, we can either significantly change our lifestyle, or we can do what other people aren't going to do, so we can set ourselves up. And so we decided to leave this property and rent it out. And we moved into what I affectionately call the meth house. It was in a great neighborhood. It was only a mile away from where we live, but there were holes punched in the walls. There were deadbolts in all the bedrooms. Like, it was not a happy home. And I distinctly remember I'm on my lunch break. I only live 6 minutes from work now, which is a huge upgrade from my 2-hour commute. But on my lunch break, I'm like, I would just take off my blazer, like go back to the house, and I'm hammering the laminate floors in place. And when my alarm sounds on my phone, spritz the body spray, put the blazer back on, and I'm back in corporate, right? We really had to make some sacrifices. Now, granted, we're doing all this while I'm still overseeing the rehab of a fourplex, while I'm still, in conversations with the property manager for this house to get a quality tenant in here. Right. So I don't really want to paint this picture that, I wished this into the atmosphere and 4 years later, I'm a millionaire. Like, there is a grind involved. You have to pay a little bit. I even got to the point where after the meth house, the fourplex was designed so that we'd renovate one unit, put in a tenant, renovate another unit, put in a tenant.
I like that.
But when we bought the property, that's assuming all the tenants were paying, and they weren't. So it was an absolute mess. So when it came down to our cash flow, I told my husband again, we've just renovated this beautiful meth house into something that actually is a sellable asset. Do we want to significantly change our life again or make some hard choices? And at the age of 34 years old, with 2 children and a husband, I moved back to my childhood home upstairs, and my mama is doing my laundry again. And here I am calling myself a real estate investor with 6 units under management, and I'm homeless. We were doing that with a smile because I knew what the end was going to look like. Mm-hmm. When you're going through situations like that and you don't have clarity, you don't have a good vision of what the end looks like, it's real easy to give up. But for us, that was never an option. 6 months after we moved into my parents' house, the tenants here, unfortunately, he lost his job and moved to Atlanta, where he got another one. We were coming back to clean it up to rent again, and we looked at our finances again. By that point, the fourplex was fully rented, and we were pulling in really good cash flow there. The meth house was that was rented as well. We were pulling in really good cash flow there. And at that point, that's when we decided, okay, now it's time to come back to where we were. Had we stayed here, we wouldn't have those extra 2 properties. We wouldn't have that extra income, and we would be drowning in debt. It's okay to take a step back. There's no pride involved. We're all on different journeys. Okay to take a step back because eventually you'll get what you want.
Was a part of the strategy of moving back home also being able to eliminate your housing expense so you could then throw your working income into the properties?
Absolutely. So we were pulling pennies anywhere that we can find them, right? And I did pay my parents' rent just because that's the right thing to do. But yeah, we were managing our cash flow. And I mean, people hate the word budget because it sounds restrictive, but everyone deals with that, right? Like, even I have clients right now that are pulling in $40,000 a month, and we have to wrangle them in. Like, you really only have 35, cash flow management is a thing that all of us have to deal with. So you either manage your expenses or get more money. And we were doing both.
Yeah. I would argue that some women wouldn't want to do that. They wouldn't want to take that step back. They wouldn't want to move back home. What makes you different? And how did you get that way? Because I just feel like they want the comfort, they want the luxury now, and they're not willing to sacrifice the immediate gratification for the $1 million portfolio that could come if they just made that sacrifice.
Yeah. I would love to take credit for this, but I have to say I've got tremendous support. My parents were more than supportive of our goals. They welcomed us with open arms. My husband is my rock, right? And it's not easy to move into your in-laws' place, and live like a child. We're used to being a man, but he understood the vision too. And I think a lot of that had to do with when we set out on this journey of retirement, we created that vision together. It wasn't my dream. It was our dream. And there are things on the vision board right now that I don't want or care about at all, but that's what is important to him. So together we're going to push forward. And, there are things on there that aren't really his passions, but he agrees that if the future that's going to make me happy, he's going to push forward with that too.
I think that's it. I think it's having a vision. You have to have a vision that you're working towards. And the reason why I think that's important is because if your vision is million and you have 100,000, then you can make the sacrifice to get to the million. But if your vision is just the immediate comfort and you have 100,000, it's like, cool, we live it now. I can do whatever. I can go shopping with 100,000. But I think that's really important, is locking in on a vision. So there's a concept. I was looking at your website and it says you do flips without rehab.
Yeah, flipping without rehab. Yeah.
Can you talk to us about that concept?
Yeah. So there's a couple of ways to do this. The reason I fell into this is because after really after the fourplex, we realized that, yeah, this vision is out there, but there's like a path that is blocked because we don't have enough money. So how do we get more money? And so we were actually thinking of wholesaling houses or flipping houses to raise big chunks of cash so we could go out and buy more property. But I went to a real estate investment association meeting, and there was a gentleman there talking about flipping vacant land. And first I was totally disinterested. But there were three things that really resonated with me. First, we were in a group of about 300 people. He was like, how many of you flip houses, rent houses, or whatever? And, all the hands go up. And he's like, all right, how many of you do storage units, other commercial stuff, like more hands go up? It's like, everyone put your hands down. How many of you are flipping or renting vacant land? And there were 3 hands that went up. And I was like, well, obviously, because no one, like, what's in land? But he was like, that's your competition. And I was like, okay, all right. Well, I do like that. The second thing that really resonated was the fact that with wholesaling, it's really a race to the property. So if someone has made up in their mind that they want to sell their land fast, you got to answer the phone and you have to be the first person at that appointment. My corporate career was going really well. I did not have that flexibility. My husband had just started at another place. He did not have that flexibility. If it came down to time and speed, that did not fit our lifestyle. So I was really attracted to the fact that when you get a piece of property and you want to see, what it's worth, you just go to Google Maps or Google Earth. That's even better than walking around down the street, because all I can see are the 4 trees that are right here. I can't even see into the property. So I loved that we could do it remotely. And I have heard about remote wholesaling, but you still need to understand how to do repairs and how to work with contractors. And that does factor in. So I loved that wasn't even an issue with vacant land. The fact that I could do it remote.
How do you make money on a land deal?
I love sell it high. I don't get it.
How do you get it? How do you get it for a lower price than what it's worth?
Yeah. So that really has to do with the same way that you would do it with a house, right? If you walk up to a house that doesn't look that great, you know what you could get for it on the market. That's why you're in this business. It's just a matter of transaction engineering. Like Roshana said, how do we make the seller happy and still make a profit? It's the same. So in the housing world, generally we talk about a maximum allowable offer, or MAO, of 70%. The most you can offer plus your expenses and rehab is 70% of what you can sell it for, because that 30% is your profit. In vacant land, our maximum allowable offer is 30%. So we buy land at 30 cents on the dollar, and that gives us some flexibility there, right? So if we want to sell it for full price, land typically takes a little bit longer than houses to sell. You can wait and capture all that equity. Or if you want to fire sale it, put vacant land on the market at 50% off and watch how fast it goes.
Yeah.
And you still are making money. Better than that. This is the third thing that caught me. Because remember, I told you, I'm not in this business to be a flipper. It's just a vehicle. I want money that I don't have to work for. When you buy property at 30 cents on the dollar, and you talk to somebody who can't get a loan from a bank on vacant land, by the way, a lot of banks don't lend on vacant land, just they don't understand the asset. They don't like to do that. Now I can offer owner financing. So this is a deal I just did in January. Bought the property for $12,000, put it on the market at full value. It's a little bit over market at $60,000, and I got a buyer. The reason I got that buyer at $60,000 was because I said, just give me 20% down, 12.9% interest, and you can pay me off over the next 10 years. So he gave me the $12,000 I needed to close as a down payment. And for the next 10 years, I'm getting $700 a month.
So you wholesaled it?
No, it's actually double close. Okay. Because in order to wholesale it, I don't have any rights to the property, so I can't collect payment.
You actually own it.
Exactly. So I had to own it for like 2 seconds. And then as an owner, I could do owner financing.
I love it. Yeah, own it for 2 seconds, literally.
Hold on, hold on.
And that strategy.
Yeah.
So what do you look like? So when you're looking for a house,
Yeah.
you're looking for a distressed seller. Same thing true with land?
100%. It's never the property. It's always the person.
Hmm.
And I like what Rashana said earlier. We're problem solvers. So when we get a problem, we see money. That's what we can do. If there's a problem we can solve, we can figure that out. There's money to be made. But, 90% of the people that I'm sending a letter to, they don't have a problem. And that's okay. The answer is no. My price isn't going to work for you. That's cool. I'm only interested in the yeses anyway.
So how do you go and how do you find your leads? How do you find people that you want to mail or call?
Yeah, I just do the entire county record of vacant land.
Well,
Yeah,
what about
go ahead.
like tax delinquencies? None of that. Just whoever has vacant land when sending you a letter.
Yeah. So
No?
when I started, I was conditioned from the housing world to go after tax delinquent, divorce, like things like that. But what was interesting is that when I opened it up, only 30% of my leads were coming from people that had visibly distressed situations. For some reason that I still don't quite understand, people with vacant land tend to keep it up. I mean, maybe because the taxes are so low and doesn't hurt them that much. They own vacant land. They're not building on it. They have no intentions to build on it. But they pay the taxes every year. They pay the HOA, that's a thing, every year. And there's nothing really wrong. But you come up to them and you're like, hey, I'm interested in selling. And it's like, you know what? We've had this for 20 years. We were going to build something, but now the grandkids are here and life just changed. There's nothing wrong. It's just, yeah, make me an offer.
So with real estate, to determine the value, like an actual structure, you're looking at the comps to determine what the market value is. Same thing with land. You're just looking, how do you determine the value of land?
Yeah, there's three main ways, but the most common way is through comps. You're absolutely right. And what's nice about vacant land at most county assessors, not in California, because your tax assessor is just weird. But in the rest of the country, most of the country, the assessed value of vacant land is linked to the market value in some way. It might be 80% of market, 90% of market, 50% of market, but there is a linkage. The assessed value isn't just 2% more than what it was last year, right?
Got it.
So because of that, I can very easily go to the property appraiser website, pull all the vacant land that's more than a certain amount, because I'm not about $5,000 checks. So I pull vacant land that's worth at least $100,000. I mail to everybody.
Mm.
Yeah. And because I know what the value is with that assessed value at the tax assessor, I stopped sending what we call neutral letters, like I'm interested in buying your land. Now I only send blind offers. So I just send letters and say, hey, I say that you own property at One Bear Run. I'm willing to offer you $45,000 for it. Call me if you're interested.
Mm.
So I don't get a lot of looky-loos.
And that number is the 30% MAO.
Yeah.
You don't even like call and ask what their circumstances are. You don't care. It's just like, here, I'll pay you this.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. The reason why I'm interested, actually, we had a piece of commercial property in Detroit. They knocked it down. Now we have this huge just plot of land that's just sitting there trying to figure out what we should do with it. And so I was like, should we build something on it? But now that I realize I can actually probably sell it for 50% and I can still make money, it might actually be a good deal.
Owner finance it.
Right. Exactly. There we go.
Especially, I mean, and honestly, 12.9% might sound high, but to my mobile home people, my RV lot people, y'all know that it's not high. That actually 12.9 is quite competitive for vacant land.
Man.
Yeah.
And then if it's owner finance, let's say the default, you still keep the down payment, you still keep all the payments, you take your property back.
Oh, by the way, what state is this in?
It's
Detroit,
in
you said.
Michigan.
Okay.
Michigan.
That's wonderful. So what you should do, what I would do, rather than giving them the deed and then writing a note and you're acting like the bank, if you are concerned with default at all, set it up as a lease purchase. So that way they're just leasing the land to you. And in case of default, it's just a letter. Like, I'm sorry, we're evicting you from the property and exterminating your lease. No foreclosure, no nothing. That doesn't work in every state. Doesn't work in California. Doesn't work in Nevada. You might have some issues in Texas, but try that.
Man, you are really smart.
Not me. It's just time. A lot of different issues, and you just figure stuff out.
Charles is taking notes.
Right, I am. Wow. There's a lot of other questions we could ask you. We're coming up on time.
Oh,
I think we'll have to have you come back for a part 2.
I'm more than happy to do so.
Yeah, because I got some more questions too.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this was good. This was a great episode so far. I learned a lot, and I like that. I mean, we have the synergy in terms of the importance of just putting yourself out there, going after even when you don't know, just doing what you got to do to figure it out, taking those risks, picking up the phone, making those calls. Yeah. And approaching it also with good intentions, right? Like I believe like, your story is great because like you said, you fell into the industry on accident, but you received a ton of blessings since then by just being, a good person. So I thank you for sharing all of that and all of that information and your story. So in regards to wrapping up, we have 4 fire round rapid questions that we like to ask before we let you go. And the first question is, who is someone you look up to and why?
So this is a small it's a local guy. His name is Phil Georges. He is an absolute master at multifamily development. He just finished doing a 52 unit property in Rochester, New York. And he just so much respect for us. And I don't know why, because he's like my superhero. But I'm really excited because I told you this whole thing comes full circle about the lending situation. You can imagine with land, you generate lumps of cash and you have to do something with it. So he's been talking about this property forever. And I'm like, man, one day I'm going to do like a big unit like that. He came to me 2 weeks ago and he's like, hey, I need a little chunk of change to finish up the financing. Can you pitch in? And I was over the moon that I actually got to participate in his project on the lending side at all. But I look up to that guy like no other. And if you can look him up, Phil Georges in New York, really amazing guy. Yeah.
Yeah, when we do part 2 of this episode, I definitely want to ask you about best practices when it comes to lending.
Yeah.
Because I get presented with lending all the time, and I have one loan out, and he stopped answering the phone, and so we got problems. But I got to figure that out. So if I do get presented with new opportunities, I do it the right way. What is your favorite business or real estate book?
Oh, that's a hard one. I like Rich Dad Poor Dad just because I think for newbies, it's one of those that's like, oh, aha moment. Think and Grow Rich. This is really good for mindset. I've got a whole list. That's too many.
Has your husband read Rich Dad Poor Dad?
He has.
I think that's very important for your spouse to have read that book too.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
it's getting that vision.
Right.
Yeah. And it's funny because he's not a reader. He's an audiobook kind of guy, but I got it from the library. I don't even know. Someone asked me, and I don't even know why I picked up that book. Again, God just told me to do it. And I'm like, oh, it's sitting in front of me. I read the book in 2 days and I handed it to my husband who just refused to look at it. And I was like, look, it's due back to the library in 2 more days and I'm not paying that 10 cents. So he read the whole thing in 2 days too. And he was like, we have to do this.
Right. It changes your whole life. And if they haven't read it, then they're going to look at you like, you're just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
What sets apart successful business owners and real estate investors from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
Action. I mean, that's really the only thing. I am not smarter than anyone. I am not more creative than anyone else. It's just If I could rewrite King James, it's the race is not given to the swift or to the strong. It's the people who are too darn stubborn to give up. That is the determining factor.
Yeah. Our last question is, what does wealth mean to you?
Oh, yes. So I define wealth as my perfect day, and I try to live my perfect day as often as possible. So that is working no more than 5 hours in a single day. But half of that time has to be on things that are deeply significant to the universe, whether that's changing other people's lives in real estate, changing other people's lives in business, to my kids, like that has to be a significant part of my time. Also, it's spending time with my husband. He is my absolute best friend, and I could not imagine a life without him. Every day with him is wealth.
Wow. Awesome. Great show. Rashana is going to invite you to be on her women's panel. She has a group called Infinity.
Awesome.
So I know they get a ton of value from that conversation. Before we let you go, where can people find you? Where can they follow you? And where can they support what you have going on?
Awesome. Yeah, you can check me out at flippingwithoutrehab.com. You can also find me on TikTok, Facebook. I'll get on the Instagram soon. But TikTok and Facebook are the best ways to find me. Both of them are Flipping Without Rehab.
Oh man, I gotta check out your TikToks.
Yeah, that's fun.
Good stuff. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Have a great one.
So for all the listeners, make sure you leave us a rating, a review, and also subscribe to the podcast on all channels. Share with your friends and your family so we can continue to get the good word out. My name is Charles Oglesby with Rashana Scott, the Realtor of the Year, and we're signing off. Thank you. All right.